Congratulations, you're pregnant with triplets. Hearing the doctor's words, Johnny, my husband, and his mother, Wendy, all stood there in shock, overwhelmed by the good news. Coming to our senses, our whole family was overjoyed. Johnny and I had been married for 8 years and had been eagerly waiting for a child, so we never expected to have 3 at once. But the next thing the doctor said instantly sobered us up. The risks of multiple pregnancies are high, and I would advise you to consider reducing the number of fetuses for safety reasons, he said. Hearing this, Wendy immediately exploded. What do you mean by reducing? My big, fat grandson can't be missing. What's wrong with having multiples? As long as they're well taken care of, isn't it the same thing as giving birth? What kind of heartless doctor are you? Do you even know how to talk? The doctor was only offering good advice, but Wendy reacted so strongly. Johnny was embarrassed and quickly pulled his mother away. As they walked away, Wendy continued to curse and threaten, saying that her big, fat grandson couldn't be missing. Otherwise, she would die in front of us. It wasn't until they got home that she finally calmed down. Then she grabbed my hand and said, "We're not going to listen to that black-hearted doctor. You and Johnny have worked so hard to get pregnant, and you have to give birth to all 3 of my grandsons. Losing one of them would kill me. I'll take good care of you during this time, and the baby will naturally be safe." As a mother, I didn't want to lose any of my baby, so I half-heartedly agreed with Wendy. However, I never expected the doctor's words to be validated so soon. At 3 months into my pregnancy, one day after using the restroom, I suddenly felt dizzy and fainted on the ground. When I woke up again, I was lying in bed in the hospital. It turned out that the fetus was absorbing too much nutrients from me, causing my pre-pregnancy anemia to worsen suddenly, which led to my fainting. The doctor looked at my medical report seriously and said, "You are not only severely anemic, but your blood pressure is also getting higher. If you don't reduce the fetus, even if you can save the baby, you can't save yourself." For the doctor's advice, Wendy could only listen to the part that says, "The baby can still be saved. Then it's more likely that we will reduce the fetus," said the nurse. "Then you don't care about your daughter-in-law," said Wendy, who was angry. Hearing this, Wendy said it as if it was natural. "What's the big deal? What woman doesn't give birth? It's just her who is so precious." Then she pulled me out of bed. "Come on, let's go home with Mom. Mom will make something nutritious for you to eat, and the baby will definitely be saved," said Wendy. Hearing this, my heart was cold. I knew that Wendy had never liked me, especially because I hadn't gotten pregnant in the past few years, and she had never shown me a good face. But I didn't expect that, even under the doctor's advice, she could sacrifice me for the baby. But I was scared by the doctor's words. Now the fetus is only 3 months old, and I have such severe pregnancy symptoms. What if something unexpected happens later on, even if the baby is saved, but I am gone? How can 3 children without a mother live a happy life? After going home, I told Johnny about my situation and my plan to reduce the fetus. But I didn't expect that Johnny had the same idea as his mother. The doctors in the hospital are just trying to make things seem worse to make more money. Just listen to Mom. And the next morning I took a taxi directly to the hospital. Wendy, seeing that I wasn't home, seemed to have guessed something and called me frantically. But I hung up her calls one by one, not intending to answer. Then Johnny called. After thinking for a while, I still answered his call. Johnny was anxious on the other end of the phone, asking, "Maya, where are you?" "I went to the hospital for inpatient reduction of fetus," I replied. "Come back first." My mom asked someone to get a prescription from an old Chinese doctor. It's said to be very useful for treating pregnant women's anemia. You can try taking it for a month first. If it works, we can have another child. If not, we can just wait for a month and then do the reduction surgery again. "There's still time," Johnny said. Hearing this, I was also hesitant. This was my own child, and I didn't want to reduce it. If the prescription really worked, it would be worth a try. After all, the doctor had said that as long as the reduction surgery was done before the baby was fully developed, there wouldn't be much of an impact. So I told the driver to turn around and go back. When I got home, Wendy, who had always shown a bad face to me, was smiling kindly. I knew that she must have been doing so because of the baby in my belly. Wendy assured me that the blood-building prescription she had got from a regular hospital's old Chinese doctor was specially formulated for pregnant women with anemia, and that it would work wonders. In order to convince me, she even invited the doctor to our home on the weekend to take my pulse, explaining things in detail, which made me lower my guard. After all, I didn't want to give up any of my children. So I started drinking the blood-building soup that Wendy had boiled for me 3 times a day. But to my surprise, when I went for a checkup at the hospital a month later, the doctor told me that there were 2 abnormal fetuses in my womb. What? Abnormal? The doctor's words hit me like a bolt of lightning, leaving me dazed. I told you earlier that multiple pregnancies may cause fetal malformations, and that you should consider reducing the number of fetuses. If you had reduced the number of fetuses then, you would only have to reduce 1, and could have saved the other 2. This was unbearable pain for a mother. At this moment, Wendy came up with another test report. Hearing the doctor say there were 2 abnormal embryos, she exploded. 2 abnormal? How could that be possible? Supposed to be abnormal only once. You're a quack. Do you even know how to check? Hearing this, I was shocked. Mom, what are you talking about? What abnormal? Coming to her senses, Wendy realized she had let slip her tongue and quickly made up for it. This isn't what the doctor said before, that you should reduce the fetus to 1. How could there suddenly be 2 abnormal ones? No. Wendy's expression was off. Even though the doctor said that multiple pregnancies were dangerous, there was no certainty that they would be abnormal, and the suggestion to reduce the fetus was made out of consideration for my body. That was also why I was willing to drink the blood tonifying soup, giving myself and the child another chance. Wait, blood tonifying soup. Recalling Wendy's confident tone and expression earlier, as if she had known all along that my child in the womb would be abnormal, it suddenly occurred to me that there might be something wrong with the blood tonifying soup she had cooked. In front of the doctor, my voice trembling, I asked her, "Mom, what is the blood-building soup you gave me? How did you know for sure that my baby in the belly would definitely be deformed?" The doctor, hearing this, also strangely asked, "Blood-building soup? What blood-building soup?" "It's the blood-building prescription my mother found from the old Chinese doctor, which is said to be good for anemic pregnant women," I replied. Upon hearing this, the doctor felt ridiculous. Who has pregnant women rushing to drink Chinese medicine? The complex nature of Chinese medicine can have an impact on the baby if taken carelessly. Your child's deformation may be related to that Chinese medicine. Realizing that she couldn't hide it anymore, Wendy then tried to justify. "What do you know? This is the recipe I paid a lot of money for from the old Chinese doctor, which kills girls but not boys. Since we have to reduce the fetus, why not just get rid of the girl? I didn't know your belly was so unlucky and deformed 2 of them." Hearing this, my emotions collapsed. "Mom, how could you be so cruel? This is your grandson. How cruel am I?" Wendy argued defiantly. "I'm doing this for your own good. Are you going to blame your mother? This old hag. She harmed my 2 children and could still have the nerve to say such things. It's absolutely outrageous." Just as I was about to confront her again, Johnny came. He pulled us all out of the doctor's office and then frowned and asked, "Maya, how did you talk to my mom? How about you ask your mom what she did first?" Johnny rarely saw me in such a fit of anger, and he was momentarily stunned. After he understood the whole situation, he was also somewhat shocked. "Mom, how could you give Maya that medicine? What's wrong with you two? I did it for your own good, to get your wife to give birth to a son for you," she said. At this point, Johnny asked the question that was on my mind. "So how did you know Maya was having a girl?" Wendy was a bit smug as she lowered her voice. "This is a private hospital. I bribed the doctor who did the ultrasound on Maya. I gave her a few $1,000s, and she told me that Maya was having 2 boys and a girl." As she spoke, she suddenly looked panicked. "That old man said the medicine was meant to kill girls, not boys. How could there be 2 deformed fetuses?" She thought for a moment, then suddenly stood up. "I need to ask him about this." I didn't let her leave. I looked at her with a fierce expression. "Mom, don't you think you should say something about how you've ruined my 2 children?" Wendy hadn't apologized once since we found out the results. Instead, she kept trying to shift the blame. I was furious. But before Wendy could say anything, Johnny jumped in. "That's enough, Maya. Mom's just trying to protect us." "But these are your own biological children, Johnny." It was one thing for him to take his mother's side, but at this point, it was clear that Wendy was at fault, and he was still defending her to this extent, even neglecting his own biological children. I was so angry that my stomach hurt, and I was afraid that my only child would be hurt again, so I demanded to go to a 3A hospital for the operation. But the nurse said that their doctors were very skilled, and that I was in great danger now, and the operation had to be done immediately. Otherwise, what if the other child had a problem? I was so scared that I immediately checked into the hospital for the reduction of fetuses. After the operation, I touched my belly, which had shrunk by a few inches, and tears streamed down my face. My 2 children were gone. They had already taken shape in my womb, but because of Wendy's stupidity, they left me. If I had known this, I would have listened to the doctor's advice from the beginning and reduced the fetus. Then Wendy would not have had such a stupid idea. After the operation, Wendy and Johnny came to see me. I didn't even lift my eyelids when I saw them. Johnny saw this and quickly pulled out a 4D picture of the baby for me to see. "Honey, don't be sad. We still have 1 child. Look, this is the 4D picture of the baby. It's a bit blurry, but you can still see that the baby looks like you. How cute." Talking about the baby made me react a little. Staring at the 4D picture, watching how the baby's facial features resembled mine, I couldn't help but burst into tears again. "Baby, my baby." Johnny quickly hugged me and whispered, "That's okay. Don't be sad anymore. Don't blame Mom either. She was also cheated. We just went to find the old Chinese doctor, but he had already run away. We have already reported to the police." Wendy's face didn't look too good either. "That's right, Maya. It's all the fault of that dead old man who cheated me. Don't be angry anymore. Taking care of the fetus is the right thing to do. In the meantime, Mom will take good care of you." With those words, I had no choice but to accept this misfortune. I was married to Johnny and lived far away from my parents. Now I was still pregnant, and I had no one else to rely on except Johnny. However, I didn't expect that after I was discharged from the hospital, Wendy started causing trouble again. Since returning home, I have developed a psychological shadow towards Wendy. I no longer allow her to handle any of my meals, and I would rather cook myself while pregnant than eat anything strange that could harm my child in the womb. Wendy is very angry with me, accusing me of being petty and not being generous towards elders. However, Johnny hasn't said anything, as he has also lost his own child. One day, when Wendy came home with a very bad look on her face, she hesitated before looking at my belly, and her expression became even more gloomy. I was used to her mischievous behavior and didn't bother to ask what she was thinking. But to my surprise at dinner, Wendy actually said to me with a straight face, "Maya, why don't you have this pregnancy terminated and have another one with Johnny?" "What? I dropped my chopsticks on the table in disbelief as I looked at her. Mom, what are you talking about? Even Johnny frowned. Mom, who told you that? But Wendy looked completely innocent, as if she really was a thoughtful elder for us. Mother asked the doctor who did the ultrasound on you last time, and he said you are now carrying a female fetus. What's the point of giving birth to a girl? Just abort it. Once you get better, you can try again, she said. Hearing this, I trembled with anger. Mother, how could you say such things? Johnny did not agree either. Come on, Mother. Maya and I have been trying for years to have a baby, and now that we finally have one, we don't care if it's a boy or a girl. Let's just have it and see what it is. However, Wendy changed her tune again. That girl in your belly is nothing but trouble. She's fine, but she's killed my 2 grandsons. If you really give birth to her, who knows what kind of trouble she'll bring to our family? We must abort her. Besides, if you really give birth to this child, you'll have to sit through another month of confinement. And when will you give me a grandson then? Mother, what kind of things are you saying? I was furious and hoped that Johnny would speak up for me. However, when my gaze met his, I realized that he was avoiding eye contact and didn't want to look at me. Seeing his reaction, my heart really sank. Johnny actually agreed with his mother. Haha, I used to think that Johnny was a mama's boy and that he was influenced by his mother in many things. But today I realized that he and his mother are actually no different, both stupid and evil. I looked at the mother and son in disappointment and coldly said, "This child is not something I can abort. Whether she is a boy or a girl, she is my child and my treasure." However, I didn't expect that my decision would give Wendy another idea. Since the confrontation, although Wendy always looked at me with disdain, I could do nothing about it, and the days went on as usual. However, for safety reasons, I secretly installed a surveillance camera at home. In case Wendy wanted to do something sneaky again, I could be prepared. To my surprise, I actually caught Wendy's slip-up. One day, while I was taking a nap in my room, Wendy and Johnny were whispering in the living room. Out of habit, I turned on the surveillance and heard Wendy and Johnny talking. "Son, your wife has been married to you for 8 years and only had 1 daughter. Why don't I find a woman for you to have a son?" Hearing these words, my blood ran cold. A mother who was actually suggesting to her son to find a mistress and have a son outside. Johnny didn't speak immediately, but I saw hesitation in his face. Seeing this, I couldn't bear to watch any further. Johnny's mind had been swayed by his mother. An affair was just a matter of time. I covered myself with a blanket and cried for a long time, unable to understand how I had left my parents and married into the Johnny family without hesitation. During the years of being married to Johnny, I worked together with him to build our careers and kept the house in order at home. As Johnny's wife, I thought I had done everything to the best of my ability. But I never expected the result to be like this. After crying my eyes out, I thought of my innocent and deformed children, as well as Wendy and Johnny's attitude. I really hated them. Facing such a mother and son pair, what was I still tolerating? A crazy thought gradually took shape in my mind. At night, I watched Johnny snoring beside me and quietly opened the drawer next to my bedside table. A flash of silver light danced through the darkness, as swift as a bolt of lightning does. It was a sharp pair of scissors. Looking at the man who had slept beside me for many years, I had a moment of hesitation. But as soon as I thought of the way he had ignored my feelings, sided with his mother, and defended his mother's words even after the child's accident, I pushed aside that trivial hesitation. However, the real reason that finally pushed me to act was his hesitation in the surveillance video today. Since you value boys so much and want to have a son, I'll just make sure you don't get what you want. Within a few seconds, a horrifying scream echoed through the room. Johnny was awakened from his sleep by the pain and saw me holding scissors by his side, looking like he had seen a ghost. He covered his wound in agony and screamed, "My asterisk to kill you." Oh! This scream woke up Wendy, who lived next door. She rushed over and saw Johnny in such a ghastly state that she was so angry that blood rushed to her head. She picked up the stick on the ground and was about to hit me, shouting, "You witch! How dare you treat my son like this? I'll kill you!" I pushed my belly in front of her and shouted angrily, "If you have the guts, go ahead and hit me. Now your son is infertile. The baby growing in my belly is the only heir to the Hong family now. Go ahead and kill her." This fierce tone indeed frightened Wendy, and she dared not move any more. Johnny, on the other hand, covered his wound in pain and asked Wendy to call 120 for him first. After sending the injured person to the hospital, Wendy was so angry that she called the police directly. After being taken to the police station, I was not panicked, because before taking action, I had already thought of a way to deal with it. As soon as I arrived at the police station, I quickly confessed to my crime and tearfully apologized to Wendy in front of the police. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt Johnny on purpose. I just had a bad dream at night, dreaming about the 2 children I lost. And you insisted that I have an abortion. That's why I lost my temper and hurt Johnny before I was fully awake," I said, breaking down in tears again. Then I turned to the police and pleaded, "Police officer, arrest me and put me in prison. You can sentence me however you want. I really know I did something wrong. Please put me behind bars." But the police, being the police, quickly picked up on the key information in my statement. "What dead children? What abortion? Explain yourself clearly," the police said. Hearing this, Wendy panicked. "There's nothing to it, police officer. She hurt my son like that on purpose. Please arrest her right away. Lock her up for a few days." Of course, the police would not listen to her and instead took me to the interrogation room to take my statement. Facing the police's questioning, I tearfully told them everything that had happened recently. The female police officer taking notes by my side even had tears in her eyes. Any woman who heard my story would have no choice but to shed tears. After taking my statement, the police took me and Wendy to the same room and said they would help us resolve our family conflicts. Wendy immediately exploded. "What family conflicts? She deliberately hurt my son on purpose. That's a crime. Please arrest her right away and put her in prison after she gives birth." Compared to Wendy's aggressive behavior, I sat silently in the corner, tearfully weeping. The police advised Wendy to calm down. "Although Maya did hurt your son, you also caused her to lose 2 children before. Technically speaking, that's your negligent injury to her body, resulting in miscarriage. If your son's wife wants to file a lawsuit against you and hold you accountable, it's eligible for prosecution. But your son, these few days, I have been closely monitoring Johnny and Wendy's movements on the surveillance camera. Finally, I caught a glimpse of something suspicious during dinner one day. Johnny's phone rang several times and he glanced at the number, but then he simply turned off the screen and didn't answer it. I asked him, "Why didn't you answer the phone?" "Spam call," Johnny said, sounding annoyed and a little guilty at the same time. I had a feeling that he was hiding something from me. After dinner, I pretended to be tired and said I wanted to go to bed, leaving a huge living room space for Johnny. Then I went back to my room and opened the surveillance camera. Johnny looked at me as I went back to my room, and then he went to the balcony to make the call. This house was our wedding present when we got married, a spacious 180 square meters. If I hadn't installed the surveillance camera, I wouldn't have been able to hear what he was saying from such a distance. Johnny's tone was a bit cold. "Didn't I tell you not to come looking for me?" Hearing those words, my heart tightened, and an unbelievable thought crossed my mind. I don't know what was said on the other end of the phone, but Johnny's tone became even colder. "I was just playing around with you. Did you really think I would divorce my wife and marry you? My wife is due to give birth in 2 months, and I warn you not to cause any trouble." I had thought that I would feel sad after finding out the truth, but when it was all settled, I only felt irony and disgust. It sounded like he had been cheating with his mistress for quite some time. But before this, I had never noticed anything suspicious about him. Johnny really surprised me. However, after learning about this, a plan of revenge suddenly flashed through my mind. We waited for another 2 weeks, and the plan finally came to fruition. Johnny and Wendy, who had previously been quiet, suddenly stood up tall. Johnny looked at me with disgust and said, "Maya, let's get a divorce." "What?" said surprised. "Are you crazy, Johnny? Are you giving up your child too?" Wendy sneered. "A girl? What's the point? I don't want her." We had already called each other names, so I didn't hold back. "Fine, if you want a divorce, let's divide the property first, and then I'll go with you to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce certificate. When I married Johnny, his business was just starting out and he needed both people and money. I gave up my stable job to work with him and used my savings to help him through a difficult time. This business is something we have both worked hard for, and I will take half of it. But Wendy was clearly unwilling to let go of it. You've ruined my son like this, and you still have the nerve to ask for money? Dream on, you'll be leaving empty-handed. If that's the case, there's nothing to talk about. I won't get a divorce, I said. Then I'll have Johnny take you to court and sue you for intentional injury. Let the judge decide to divorce you. I laughed and said, Mom, I suggest you have time to read more about the law. A woman cannot be divorced during her pregnancy, unless I agree. As long as you have the patience, I don't mind. Anyway, the property will not be divided, so I won't get a divorce. Hearing this, Johnny frowned and grabbed his mother, saying, Fine, property division, right? Afraid that I would change my mind, Johnny rushed me to the Civil Affairs Bureau the next day to get the divorce certificate. After signing the property division agreement and receiving my share, I also gave Johnny an additional agreement renouncing his rights to the custody of his daughter. After everything was settled, I went to meet someone. Addie's greedy eyes lit up as soon as she saw me. Maya, sister, the job you asked me to do is done. Can I have the money now? Yes, Johnny was the one who proposed to divorce me voluntarily, gave up the child, and agreed to divide the marital property amicably. It was all because I asked Addie to approach Johnny. Addie was Johnny's mistress outside. The day Johnny left, I went straight to the store employee Lee and gave her 10,000 yuan, asking her to keep an eye out for me and help me find the lover Johnny was having an affair with. Lee took the money and readily agreed. A few days later, information about the lover was sent to my phone. When I saw the photo, I was a bit surprised. It turned out to be a familiar person. The mistress was none other than Addie, the former nanny we had hired a year ago. Addie was in her early 30s, had a moderate appearance, and was quite feisty. Last year, we hired her to take care of Wendy for a while because she was not feeling well. In that case, it was obvious that the two had been together for a long time. I chuckled coldly. Well, this way the plot would be more realistic. I found her and asked her to cooperate with me to help me get a divorce. At first, Addie was surprised when she knew I wanted a divorce and feared I had some evil intentions, so she hesitated. But I told her directly that I had an affair with someone else and wanted a divorce to be with that person. However, Johnny would not divorce me because of the child in my belly, so I needed her help. As long as she could help Johnny divorce me, she could be with Johnny openly and legally, and share Johnny's property after the marriage. In addition, I would give her an extra 20,000 yuan as a thank you fee. This double happy event was enough to make Addie agree. She approached Johnny, claiming that she had accidentally got . After all, she could no longer bear the pain of losing her grandson. After giving the money to Addie, I bought a high-speed train ticket and went home that night. My parents were sad when they heard about what had happened to me, and we all cried together. Then I stayed at my own home to rest and have the baby. There was still a month left until my due date, and during this short period, there were many interesting stories happening in the Johnny family. I forgot to take down the surveillance camera at home before I left in a hurry. In my free time, I would also watch the family's life through the surveillance camera. After I left, Addie immediately got married to Johnny and became the mistress of the Hong family. And she didn't disappoint me, as she started fighting with Wendy. At first, Wendy tolerated Addie because she was carrying her only grandson. But Addie was not easily satisfied, and she had already decided to give Wendy a scare during her pregnancy. Every day in front of Johnny, she acted very close to Wendy, like a mother-daughter duo. But as soon as Johnny left, she changed her face and ordered Wendy to do this and do that. Wendy couldn't stand her anymore, so they started fighting. Addie then held her stomach and cried in pain, calling Johnny to complain and pretending to go to the hospital to have the baby aborted, which scared Johnny. The son who had been a mommy's boy all his life yelled at his mother for the first time. He also threatened that if he hurt Addie's baby again, he would send his mother back to the countryside. Faced with his angry son, Wendy dared not say a word and was immediately put in her place by Addie. Seeing this, I felt both ironic and a sense of revenge. The Hong family's days will not be peaceful for long. One night, Addie suddenly held her stomach in agony and screamed in a terrifying face after drinking the chicken soup that Wendy had served her. Blood was flowing from her lower body, which looked horrifying. Johnny quickly rushed her to the hospital. The final results showed that Addie's baby had aborted because she had drunk the chicken soup that Wendy had added something to every day. The hospital was arranged by me before I left. As for Wendy, of course, she was just a scapegoat. She tried to defend herself, but Johnny of course didn't believe her, and he slapped her face angrily, looking like a demon. After all, his mother had done this to me before, and Johnny easily believed Addie's words. After learning that his only son had also been harmed by his mother, Johnny immediately kicked his mother out of the house and forbade her to return. As for Addie and Johnny, one only saw the other as a reproductive tool, and the other only saw the other as an ATM. Their future lives could be imagined, but these are no longer related to me. I didn't expect that after the child was born, Johnny would actually have the nerve to find my family in a city. On the day of my daughter's full moon celebration, my family and I happily gathered to celebrate her arrival. However, what we didn't expect was that a group of unwelcome guests would show up at the cozy full moon banquet. It was Wendy and Johnny who not only showed up, but also brought along TV reporters and mediators. As soon as they saw me, Wendy immediately knelt down to apologize. "Maya, all the past mistakes were my fault. Mom was wrong. Please forgive us and come back with the baby," she pleaded. Johnny also put on a sincere expression of regret. Wife, I realized how wrong I was after losing you and the baby. Please give me another chance to make up for it, okay? Faced with this scene, the postpartum weakness made me dizzy and speechless. Looking at them, all I could manage was a shaky "get out." Then my parents and relatives together drove them away, along with the so-called reporters and mediators. However, what we didn't expect was that they would shamefully put the video online, with Johnny presenting himself as a reformed good man, and me as an unfeeling woman who left home because of a conflict with her mother-in-law. The video went viral, and uninformed netizens began to criticize me, saying I was cold-hearted and didn't know how to cherish people's feelings. Seeing these comments, I was very angry. It was they who were heartless, yet they twisted the truth and used online public opinion to put me in the wrong. Fine if that's the case. Don't blame me for being truly unjust. I called the mediator's phone and said I was willing to mediate, asking them to come over. Soon they came with Johnny and Wendy. Facing their hypocritical behavior, I asked them, "Johnny isn't married to the woman he had an affair with? Why do you think of me now?" This statement not only stunned the mediator and the mediator, but also caused a stir in my live broadcast room. Yes, before they came, I had set up equipment and started a live broadcast in my own home. I want Johnny and Wendy to show their true colors in front of a national audience, and I want them to be the infamous mother and son. I peeked at my phone in my pocket and saw a screen full of question marks floating up to. Isn't it that the woman is heartless? How can it become a man's infidelity? I get it. I think the man cheated on his wife and had an illegitimate child, so his wife got divorced. How dare you ask a reporter to mediate? How disgusting. Johnny's expression is also a little embarrassed. How can she compare to you, with her after I found that I really love the person or you? Well, tell me how you've wronged me. I'll see if you're sincere. Hearing my words in front of everyone, Johnny, who had always been a little macho, was a little unable to pull his face, and then gave Wendy a wink. Wendy immediately understood and knelt down in front of me while crying. "Maya, Mom used to have trouble with you, forcing you to give birth to a son. It was wrong of Mom, but Mom knows it is wrong now. Mom doesn't value sons over daughters anymore. Mom heard that you gave birth to a beautiful girl. Mom misses it so much you take the baby and come home with us. Mom promises you, I will love you as if you were my own daughter." This is indeed very sympathetic to Wendy with his regretful expression. At least the mediator at the scene was convinced. She took my hand in earnest and said, "Wendy and my husband were really sorry for you a lot before, but you see they all knew they were wrong, so give them another chance." I sneered and asked, "Aunt, I want to ask you a question. If someone killed your child and forced you to divorce, would you forgive them?" "What do you mean by that?" Look at the eyes of unnatural Johnny. I also lazy to continue to talk nonsense with them, in front of the live camera and reporters, will reduce the birth and divorce a cleaned up. Then, the scene is ghostly silent, as if everything in the air is still. Only the bullet screen on the live screen is silently beating wildly. After the reporter and mediator reacted, they collected the equipment and said goodbye. Johnny, you entrust this to our station cannot accept. Please find someone else. Then I went back to my room and Johnny and the Windy cousins, who had been called by my father, were thrown out together. Let Johnny and Windy spend the rest of their lives in endless regret.